Kieran, CEO of Rovio, actually called me this morning, and I think he reached out to Eric as well, just to explain the news, and much appreciated. I love when companies do that, because they know that we're going to talk about it. And if we got more information, we can be more objective and less stupid when we talk about these things. So let's talk about Rovio acquiring hyper-casual game studio Ruby Games.
Dude, hold on a minute. Dude, he's totally priming the pump, dude. What is this about? He's like thinks we can be influenced.
Yeah,
I'm challenge him.
Come on.
Go ahead, sir.
I like Kieran. Anyway, what's interesting about it is, let's start with the deal structure. So deal structure, I would say it's quite conservative, and not quite, it's actually very conservative and favoring Rovio. And also they're very transparent in this deal structure. So under the terms of agreement, Rovio will acquire Ruby Games in multiple tranches. So in the first tranche, Rovio will acquire 20% of Ruby shares for $10 million cash, just to get the owners a little something. And then the second tranche, Rovio will acquire 50% of the outstanding shares, an amount that is dependent on the financial performance. The remaining 30% of Ruby's outstanding shares will be purchased in 5 equal tranches over the next 5 years, with a minimum of 50% in cash and rest in cash or shares. So it's a long term. They really want to tie them in. It's not like the Rolik acquisition where Zynga came in, dropped $185 million on them and said, guys, let's do magic. The reason for this acquisition is clearly an audience play, and it's in two segments. So one is IDFV. So basically the idea is that once they have this publisher, and once they've changed the publisher name from Ruby Games to Rovio, and we can clearly see it in the App Store, at that point they become one publisher and they're able to share device identification, and that in theory improves the Rovio's user acquisition capabilities. Secondly, there's an audience proximity. So apparently I'd say every publisher will do this. So they will test how well their games acquire players from the other one. And in this case, there was clear audience proximity. So that's why they struck the deal, because they're able to acquire players from Ruby's games to Rovio's games, and through that actually grow the in-app purchases of Rovio's game. Number 3, it has 2x the DAU of Rovio. So of course, being a public company and showing that your audience is growing significantly, and with additional not cross promotion, but ad monetization tools being used to pump users from Ruby Games to Rovio Games, will further increase the DAU of Rovio as a whole, and that will be a positive signal. And finally, there's an ad monetization revenue that is coming from Ruby Games, because it's not the biggest hyper casual publisher, but it's definitely up there with the boys. Now there's some challenges. So before, Eric, hold on. I know you want to rip a new one every time you hear a hyper casual or ad monetization, but there are challenges. So IDFV, it takes time to kick in, and we haven't really seen anybody. Well, I don't know if we have seen anybody to really being able to leverage IDFV to kind of circumvent this privacy changes on iOS. And the second challenge is that hyper casual as a genre is incredibly volatile. It has always been incredibly volatile. And is it even more volatile with the privacy changes, given that how hard it is to grow a hyper casual game, meaning that you have to be really on top of your games for creatives. And now testing creatives on iOS is more difficult. So you're essentially testing creatives on Android, and then you're trying to learn from there, and you're trying to move it to iOS. So there's a lot of hiccups. And when you're playing this game of sense of like how to improve the creative just a little bit, so that the CPI goes down just a little bit because the IPM went up just a little bit, and through that you're able to scale, that's very difficult. And when you have one of the platforms that is not allowing that type of a game, type of a gaming and optimization anymore, it is a challenge. So my take is that it's a very bold move. Turkey is extremely hot market. Like, I mean, it seems like it's the hottest gaming market in the world right now. A lot of talent there. I also think that Rovio will need ad tech to fully leverage the acquisition. At this moment, we've only seen Zynga acquire a hyper casual publisher, and I think the success of Rolik, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in this podcast, I think it's based also on the fact that Zynga has acquired Chartboost, and they can fully leverage the hyper casual audience through the ad tech. So I would say that Rovio will likely, I'm not an expert here, will likely make an ad tech acquisition as well later on this year or early next year to leverage fully the Ruby games. And finally, I just want to end up by welcoming Kieran back to the podcast to discuss this. So Kieran, Rovio's chief operating officer, great dude overall. Yeah, he should come in and talk about this acquisition. And we'll probably bring somebody from hyper casual side to bring another view. But Eric, what do you?
I just question whether or not this is going to be effective, right? I think we're watching real time, the post IDFA apocalypse, with Zynga completely just screwing the pooch, and and people talking about this. And I wish Eric was here, because the content fortress idea, building out your ability to do cross promotion within these hyper casual games without any type of understanding of who the customers are, or the ability to get the whales. I think all this seems kind of wishful thinking in a post IDFA world, like I got to do something type thing, and follow the leader. But I'll be willing to talk to him and see what Kieran has to say about this. But first of all, Kieran must have spent like 6 months negotiating this deal. The terms are so ridiculously complex. It's like, I mean, I don't know, dude. This is like, it seems ridiculous. I've never seen a deal with such like a structure before. I mean, I don't know. I think you need a PhD in math to figure this thing out, right? So I could give him credit for that, but we'll see if this has any impact. What's interesting with Rovio though is that their shit's so casual anyway. So maybe this will be more effective versus like, moving people from like these super hyper casual games to more core games. I think that's more of a challenge. But anyway, we'll see. Let's keep going, because I think we've got way too much stuff going on right now.
I want to just say regarding the deal structure, when you see deal structure like this, that is complicated and not favorable to the seller per se, the most favorable thing for a seller is just give me all the money right now. Anyways, when you see this type of a deal structure, you kind of wonder that there's not that many buyers for hyper casual, right? Because usually when you have a case going, there's a lot of bidders, and through that, the price. Yeah. Anyway, just my hypothesis.